like to bring up Larry Lessig. Welcome.
Okay, this is a little different. So I want to first talk a little bit about trust. I don't know if you saw this film called Maxed Out. It's a story of credit card debt in the United States. There are many dimensions to the problem of credit card debt in the United States, but one extraordinarily important part of this story is something called the Bankruptcy, Abuse Prevention, and Consumer Protection Act of 2005. It's a little bit of a typo. There's no consumer protection in this act at all. But the effect of this act was to make it effectively impossible for people to discharge credit card debts. So Bethlehem Steel can escape pension obligations, and Enron can escape obligations to deliver power to the state of California, but you can't escape credit card obligations anymore. You will carry these forever. Now, this change was first proposed by presidents in the administration of President Clinton. He was originally in favor of the change. Then his wife read an op-ed in the New York Times, and she began to refer to this as that awful bill. That's a small b there on that. And she is credited with single-handedly keeping this bill from becoming law, to her great credit. But like Jason in Friday the 13th, this bill would just not go away. So in 2001, it returned. By now, First Lady Clinton was Senator Clinton. By now, she had received about $140,000 from credit card and finance service companies. So what did she do? Well, she flipped. She voted for that, quote, awful bill twice. Why? Well, when Clinton was asked about this, she said, of course, it had nothing to do with this money. Here's what she said at the yearly Coast Conference about a year and a half ago.
I don't think, based on my 35 years of fighting for what I believe in, anybody seriously believes I'm going to be influenced by a lobbyist or a particular interest group.
Now, the bloggers were not convinced, but I actually believe her, and you should too. You don't get to be Hillary Clinton by caving in to particular lobbyists or particular interest groups. That's not the point. The point is, for those of you who think with me that she wouldn't have caved, that she had a soul of steel here, think what others think when they hear this story. What do they hear after they hear about the $140,000? Will they trust that the decision here was the right answer for the right reason? Number two, independence. So the framers of our Constitution were obsessed with the idea of independence, by which I don't mean the independence of 1776, the freedom from the Brits. I mean an independence that began to be their obsession by about 1785, 4 years before the Constitution, when most sane sorts were beginning to believe that America was a failure, that a certain corruption had spread itself through the society, and the independence was at the core of this corruption, or the lack of independence, because the representative inside the governments were increasingly dependents. As Jefferson put it, this dependence begets subservience, venality, suffocates the germs of virtues, and prepares fit tools for the designs of ambitions. This is what government had become. As Jefferson wrote a little bit before, we should look forward to a time, and that's not a distant one, when corruption in this, as in the country from which we derive our origin, will have seized the heads of government and be spread by them through the body of the people, when they will purchase the voices of the people and make them pay the price. Purchase the voices of the people and make them pay the price. They sought non-dependent, independent representatives who might seek the right answer for the right reason. They had a common aim. It was to build institutions, to build constitutions against this improper dependence. Now, it's not very PC to say, but let me say it. They failed in this. At least with respect to this institution, they failed. In the 19th century, Congress was a cesspool of corruption. Here's Daniel Webster, one of the leading figures from the 19th century. He was a member of Congress at the time that the Congress was considering whether to renew the charter of the Bank of the United States. He was employed by the Bank of the United States. Here's what he wrote to the bank. "If it be wished that my relation to the bank be continued, it may be well to send me the usual retainers." Bribery wasn't even a crime in Congress until 1853. The century was filled with people who went to Congress with one purpose, the purpose to feather their own nest. And as you look at the 20th century, you might think things didn't change much. You can reflect upon Mr. Stevens now being found guilty, or Randy Duke Cunningham and his extraordinary document enumerating the relationship between government contracts he would secure and the bribes he needed. $16 million contract for a boat worth $140,000, $17 million for a $50,000 payment, and so forth. So you might think nothing's changed, maybe, but I'm skeptical. In my view, the real problem here is not members going to Washington to feather their nest. The real problem here is an extraordinary attention to money for the purpose of securing tenure. And not tenure at a great place like this, tenure at this place. A constant attention to money for the purpose of election, their own election or their party's election, the re-election. And this is the one thing Congress has actually been pretty good at. If you look at the historical re-election rates, they're almost perfect. Gold star Congress gets as they approach the 100% return rate for members who want to come back to Congress. Estimates between 30 and 70% of their time focused on this question about how to raise money to come back, developing the sixth sense about how what they do in their official life affects the capacity to raise money elsewhere. This second job, raising money, increasingly becomes their first job as they yield to this influence game, the economy of influence that is Washington, what we could call the crony capitalism or K Street capitalism that defines how Washington interacts with this economy. As investors recognize, the return from a lobbyist is higher than a return from investing in great new technologies, as the chief lobbyist for the Clinton administration put it. People in industry are willing to invest money because they see opportunities here. And the number of lobbyists since he was the chief lobbyist has gone up a factor of 2, and the price for those lobbyists has doubled as well. And members increasingly depend upon this economy of influence, producing the money that they need to feed this dependency that defines their life in Congress. Never has this been worse. When the voices will purchase the voices of the people and make them pay the price. Now, this dependency has costs. If Patel would give me any time, I'd tell you about all the costs. They go through all of this. But the one I want to focus on is the cost in the way in which this destroys the first thing I talked about, trust. Money in this system destroys this trust. It destroys the possibility of this trust, and it has destroyed, we need to recognize this, the possibility of trust in this institution. In this district, 88% of the voters believe that money buys results. Whether true or not, that's what they believe. And as Rasmussen reported in July, for the first time in the history of the institution, 9% believe Congress is doing a good or excellent job. The first time in single digits. There were more people who favored the British crown at the Revolution than who favor Congress today. And you can say, what the hell would we expect? We cannot trust this institution. We won't trust this institution. We won't have faith in this institution until we can believe, as we all want to believe, that they got it wrong, either because there were more Democrats than Republicans or more Republicans than Democrats, or because they were stupid or biased, but not because of this economy of influence that is this money. Now, hope. I'm sure even those who didn't support this man have become enamored of him in the last 24 hours and the promise this administration might present. It's been captured by images and ideas through the whole course of this campaign. The one that brings me to tears every time I think about it is that moment when John Lewis recognized that the thing he had fought for his whole life might actually now be possible. And we should, of course, allow ourselves to revel in this ideal that this will accomplish something, this administration, this man. But we need to recognize that the presidency is not at the core of the cancer that infects this democracy. In a single stroke, Obama will restore the presidency. But if it's just the presidency we focus on here, there is no hope in restoring this democracy. If there is a change we need here, it's a change much more fundamental. It's a change that restores the opportunity for this, the framers' central institution of our democracy, to work, a change in Congress. This is what led Joe Trippi and I to embrace a Web 2.0 beta idea of this, which you can find here if you would join us in that. Because the promise that has inspired many of us, that inspired many of us tonight, is just the first step. And the most important is perhaps the most impossible to imagine happening, but it is the most critical. Thank you very much.